During the year 1909, President Roosevelt was finishing his second term. He is considered the greatest president ever to run the country. There are numerous number of reasons. He was loved and very open to the people. Roosevelt was very active in community events, sports, and etc. The one fact that the citizens loved was how open he was about his interest for outer space and extraterrestrials. On September 24th, 1909, reports came in on a UFO landing in New Jersey. Easy to say Roosevelt was interested. The enthusiasm was radiating off of him. It was clear to everyone inside of the ship was a human-like child, a boy. It seemed to have a fondness for the president. Finishing out his fourth term of presidency, the Great War had begun. Owen had not seen his father so angry before. The fact that Germany had started a worldwide conflict. Roosevelt believed that this needed to be dealt with. We are putting Germany in their place. On April 16th, 1915, Roosevelt wanted to inform the people where the U.S. stood with the war. This speech was called Roosevelt's Revolt. This would be his last speech. A German spy was spotted nearby before he was captured. He claimed that I must make my country proud.
The process of the elimination of the European nations proceeded according to plan. Through 1939 and well into
Maybe it's due to his alien origins, or maybe it was his special upbringing. Owen was known as the greatest scientist in the modern time. He was horribly disgusted and saddened by the death of his father. So Owen had decided to help with the war efforts. Roosevelt had made technology and creations that still haven't been replicated in an effective manner, and the war was coming on an overwhelming victory for the Allies. However, Owen was not looking for victory. He wanted the Germans to feel a familiar burn, as he put it. Despite everybody trying to convince Roosevelt, he remained persistent. Owen and his student Robert Oppenheimer had begun to start working on the absolute weapon. There was a great passion behind every step of the progress. Oppenheimer asked his teacher, why go to such lengths to end a war that they had already won? Before Roosevelt was able to answer, they had received a warning that Germany had made a last-ditch attempt to win the war. They had dropped a carpet bombing on London. This was all that Roosevelt and Oppenheimer needed to be convinced. America was no longer standing in the way of Roosevelt's weapon.
Represent the fleet, and that float represents Latin America. Princess Martha of Norway watching the Czechoslovak float, symbolizing the United Nations.
Due to the success of Roosevelt and Oppenheimer's creation, there was peace once again in the world. He is regarded as the nation's greatest by not only Americans but those within the Allied forces as well. At the request of those in the national defense, Roosevelt was now lead director. As the years passed on after the victory of the war, Owen's genius had still not reached his limit. He was aware that his birth is not from Earth and made it his mission to find where he had come from. Roosevelt, alongside the USF, decided to create the first man-made mission into outer space. They knew such a task would be nearly impossible, but Owen was not going to allow that to deter him. On May 21st, 1924, humanity had reached the stars. The mission was a success, and Owen knew that there was a very real chance that he'd once be able to find his own home again. While researching in a library, he met a woman, a nice and friendly Louise Quinston. She claims that she was there to meet her financial advisor for the bank her family owns. Owen was in awe, and they both decided to make plans for lunch later that day. The rest of the story is history. Shortly after the birth of Samuel, Louise started to get sick. However, the doctors reported it was like anything else they had seen before. Owen, in complete distraught, had put everything else on hold in order to find a cure for his wife's unknown sickness. One of those tasks he left behind was Samuel. Samuel was never described as being a bad kid, but rather quiet, and he'd keep to himself from time to time during school. Everyone thought he was a joy, but his own father. Every time he had seen with his son, people could clearly see a level of pent-up hatred. It was mainly discussed that he thought his son was a disappointment. Despite being his son, Sam never displayed any abnormal levels of intelligence. He could have easily been mistaken for any other child. However, there weren't any signs of potential abuse or neglect, so nobody ever did much to feel bad. The pity would soon turn to sorrow. During a road trip for work, Owen took Sam with him to a business meeting. The meeting was to take place atop the Empire State Building. This would finally be the last piece needed for the cure, Owen said later in an interview.